Whenever. Welcome, everyone. Why is mine? Okay. Welcome everyone to the 26th regular meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Wednesday, December 11th, and we'll be here from 6 to 7:15. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Strategic Project Manager for the city. Our co-chairs, Bill and Jose, will facilitate tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. I'm just going to take a moment to go over some meeting logistics. This meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the Transitions website under past meetings and events. For tonight's meeting, we have closed captioning available, American Sign Language and Spanish language interpretation. To click on to access Spanish language interpretation, you can click on recording in progress on the bottom of your screen. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. For committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks listening in can follow along. Please remember that the meeting chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not always live answer the questions, but they also become part of the public meeting record. With that, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll pass it to Bill to review tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Julia. Well, tonight's agenda, as we can see on the slide, it includes committee business, also public comment, and then we'll have a presentation and short discussion on the Saturday onboarding presentation that Jose and Destiny and Fred and I attended. We also covered 2025, the community presentation that's drafted, and we'll seek feedback on that strategy. We'll also have discussion to identify lessons learned, or after which we'll have a couple motions to consider. And finally, we'll review upcoming meetings and even adjourn for our social time. So we'll try for the next slide. Now, with regard to committee business, let me share that I think you probably all saw an email from Joe Hertzberg, who has opted to resign, hoping he'll reconsider, but he has expressed that. So respect that, and as we are close to the end of our terms, we won't fill that vacancy, but we will continue our good work. Also can observe that Lori Heffley did write she's coming, but she'll be late due to a prior meeting. But otherwise, everyone's expected to be here. Now, our next part of business is to approve our meeting summary for our last meeting on November 13th. So may I receive a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. And do I have a second?
I will second.
Yes. Excellent. And we have seconds. Thank you. On this, do we just seek sort of a consensus or thumbs up or aye vote? I see all ayes here. And do we have anyone via or just distance? Or remotely, Guillermo?
Brian.
Oh, Brian. And Brian, are you affirmative? Good. Okay,
Aye,
good. Oh, thank you, Brian. So minutes are approved. And now we'll go to the next slide. So we review working agreements. And as we discussed, these are all very important. So we'll go over these. In discussions, we challenge ideas rather than individuals, and we offer constructive suggestions. We also approach different opinions with curiosity and seek to understand. We've had good discussions. We'll keep the needs and concerns of the local mind, also the larger region in the forefront of our work. Welcome, Lori. And we'll arrive unless we know that we have conflicts, and we'll let the group know if we're unable to attend. We'll also seek keep multitasking to a minimum, keep focus on the objectives of the meetings, and we'll note additional topics as they come up. Next slide, please, Guillermo. Also, our expectations also include we honor the decisions of the group, and we contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate in the way that best meets our needs and each individual needs. And we'll step up, step back, and collectively work to ensure that every committee member who wants to be heard is heard. We also embrace conflict and work with our fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. Thank you in advance for the fast feedback. And we also endeavor to use I statements. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you for the slide, and we'll work to the next slide.
This is me. So this is the time we have held for public comment. Folks were asked to sign up ahead of time. We had 2 people sign up. Janice and Stefan, I believe. You both in attendance. So we're going to take Janice first and then Stefan. So I am going to send you an invite to be promoted to panelist. If you accept that invite, you'll come into the room. Hi, Janice. You can be on or off camera as you want. I just see that you unmuted. You have 3 minutes. I can help keep track of time for you. I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you, and you can start whenever you want.
Yeah, I'm just going to stay on audio, not take any time to get my, camera situated. So, at a recent meeting, there were folks who expressed dismay about the GTAC not having had enough impact on, charter implementation. And though I sympathize with that, I just want to highlight what I see as 2 important effects of your work. One, the first impact is that, as you know, there was a multi-pronged RCV education approach based on the polling and the Multnomah County analysis that recently came out. The vast majority of Portlanders understood ranked choice voting, and though nobody should have expected, instantaneous shifts in voting patterns, it was always also understood that education would need to be an ongoing effort, and that will be informed by the polling results and the other analysis, particularly that by the county. So even if within the range of players doing RCV education, that GTAC may have played a smaller role, I just think you should recognize the value of the role that you did play. The second impact is that the GTAC provided a vital window into the city's charter implementation work. Without a GTAC, I suspect the transition team would have sought input in some ways along the way, and obviously code and budget decisions made by the charter require at least, the basic public input opportunities. But the transparency level of charter implementation work, I think, was clearly enhanced due to the GTAC. Now, to be clear, thinking about what would not have happened but for the GTAC, is definitely kind of an odd way maybe to think about your impact. But I just think even if there might have been an interest in having been able to do more, that just your very existence was of value. Regarding your discussion this evening on a possible code commission, I urge caution. A thorough review of codes, and for that matter, past his administrative rules, is definitely necessary due to inconsistencies and glitches resulting from years and years of bureaus operating in silos and undue clout of commissioners in charge. But the looking back focus of a code commission should not be an immediate priority, in my view, due to more urgent looking forward work. On the administrative branch side, we've seen improvements since July and they're going to continue. And obviously on the legislative branch side, there's the need to flesh out all kinds of details about that operation. So obviously immediate code fixes will surface and will need to be made, but I suggest that they should be used to identify the scope and categories of problematic code related issues, and only then consider if a code commission is the best approach to address inconsistencies and glitches. If it is determined that a code commission might make sense, that problematic issues identification process could inform its optimal structure and timing. In other words,
Janice, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but could you wrap up this thought and maybe send the rest to me via email that I could send to
have
the
one
GTAC?
sentence. One sentence. So
do it.
I didn't quite get it down to 3 minutes, I guess. In other words, the GTAC could identify a problem and that a code commission might be one option to address that problem, but getting more detailed doesn't seem prudent. That's it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Janice.
Can I ask,
Thanks for joining us.
Janice, before you disappear, can I ask a question? Yes.
Uh,
Yeah,
that's,
it pertains to the motion you have, Terry.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about code commission. And it's my idea because I was watching all the code updates that were running through the council over the last couple months. And it seemed to me that they were doing a lot of work that wouldn't otherwise be done in the name of aligning the code with the charter. In doing so, they found just tons of stuff that needed a little fix or a bigger fix or a medium-sized fix. And I agree that there are big-time other priorities for the administrative side of the government and the legislative side of the government. The idea behind a commission, though, was to sort of get it out of that, create a separate, independent, content-neutral agency to do that work, to grind through it so that nobody else had to.
It's the question, Janice.
Yeah, this is a question for Janice. So I'm
yeah,
curious.
I understand where you're coming from. I also was tracking the various code restrictions and in other contexts have seen, outdated code. And like I say, administrative rules, one important thing is that the kind of how administrative rules are going to be handled from here on out are going to be consistent, which you might seem like, oh, of course, that was always the case. It was not always the case. And so we do have this situation, not just of glitchiness and inconsistencies related to the code, but also all the administrative rules that still stand because the new requirements in terms of format and notice, I mean, that's all going to be new. So
Okay, Janice, Terry,
I-
this is Bill. May I interject just to say we're a little over time, but
Yeah,
and we'll be able to discuss this further at the
I mean, we
next.
have public input
Yeah,
here,
it
which
just-
I think is really valuable to
Okay,
what we're going to do.
I'll sum it up, which is it's an issue. And I know that a code commission approach is one option. I'm just not convinced that it's the only option. I think there's issues between, exactly who would staff that and it'd be a lot of responsibility and strain on the city attorney, and what prerogative does the council have? Anyway, I the bottom line is, I think it would be fine if you identified a problem and that a code commission might be an option. I would just suggest not mapping out and getting too hung up on the details of the follow-up on that.
Okay, we'll end up discussing it then,
Thank
probably.
you so much, Janice.
Yes,
Really
thank you.
appreciate you being here. I will probably de-promote you in a minute. Stefan, is in the attendee list. I'm gonna promote you. If you see an invitation, just accept it and you'll come into the room.
Recording in progress.
Stefan, I hope I'm saying your name right. We're happy that you're here. You have 3 minutes. I'll kind of keep track of time and interrupt a little bit after 3 minutes. Keep your camera on and off, and welcome.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, thank you, members of the Government Transition Advisory Committee, for your time. My name is Stefan Sang. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in Northeast Portland, specifically in District 2. Tonight, I just wanted to boost a program that has been vital to our communities. I am part of the Cambodian American community and count myself as part of the larger refugee and immigrant communities here in Portland. I want to thank this committee for their work to involve and engage residents of Portland to this new governance system. This engagement with the communities historically, with the city of Portland and our communities, have been leveraged heavily with community leaders who have participated in a lot of civic leadership initiatives. Specifically, the Diversity and Civic Leadership Program under the Office of Civic Life has been a longstanding program that supports the efforts for immigrant, refugee, Black, Indigenous peoples, and communities of color, ensuring that DCL and the initiatives of the Office of Civic Life is well taken care of from this system to the next is critical to the success and well-being of these communities. And in my opinion, it is imperative that this committee continue to prioritize these programs, or programs such as these, to continue improving community engagement and generally the quality of life of all Portlanders. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Great time management.
Yay.
I appreciate both of you so much for being here. And just as a reminder for folks in attendance, we take public comment at any time. So folks can call 311, or you can email the transition team at transition@portlandoregon.gov. There's an online comment form on the transitions webpage. So with that, it concludes our public comment time, and I will turn it to Jose for our next agenda item.
Thank you. Okay, for the debrief from the onboarding presentation, the agenda says we have 1 minute. Oh, nope, 0 minutes now. So let's get going. The incoming and outgoing co-chairs had time with the newly elected officials during the December 7th onboarding session. As a reminder, this is not going to be our only opportunity to interact with the newly elected officials. Prior to the Saturday session, we sent individual emails to all newly elected officers to share work and offer to meet. And we also sent emails to their staff, all the staff that we knew of. In addition, when the new council president is elected on January 2nd, we will reach out to request a public meeting with the new council on our work and to present our final report. We're waiting until we have the president for obvious reasons. At the Saturday session, we provided a short presentation on our work that highlighted our desire to serve as a resource for the new mayor and council. The mayor and councilors with whom we talked all expressed interest in our work. To share work, we'll continue our outreach to arrange meetings with them in the coming year. Ideally, our first meeting with the council can be a presentation of our recommendations and more at a public council meeting so that the public can also see what our recommendations are. in response to our presentation, one counselor from District 1 said that their number one issue is a district office and shared GTAC priorities. I didn't see that coming. Another counselor thanked GTAC for its work and anticipated their work serving as a starting point for council discussion. The counselor also asked about GTAC's recommendation for temporary low-cost district offices beginning in January 2025 and recommended all counselors read the GTAC letter about council staffing. We stuck around for a reception that they had afterwards, which is great, and we got to continue talking more one-on-one about the work we've been doing with all the newly elected counselors, and I know I got a chance to talk to the mayor. So do we have anyone that has any questions or any other reflections for people that were there? Like I said, we have negative 2 minutes for this agenda item, so let's keep it brief. Right?
Yeah, after our presentation, I had a conversation with Michael Jordan, and I talked about our concern that we had not heard updates on these disciplines under the assistant city administrator, the acting, the AACA, especially about community life. And we just heard Stefan talk about the urgency about understanding better how that affects the broader community and communications in particular. But then there's also sustainability and the equity. Yeah. And I know that some of those positions being filled, he would be more than pleased to talk to us about it. We're going to check and see how that might fit into a future agenda, knowing that our time is short. But I think it would be vital to us to understand those and to have some conversation with them as they're implementing those positions and figuring out what the job descriptions are and what their workload, what their outreach to the community is. That's just, I thought was very, very useful for us because we haven't heard any updates on that.
So this is Zach Girl. I was just asking, I would be interested to know if they asked anything from us, like ongoing, or if there was any sort of interest in what we have proposed kind of for the next 3 months. Was there any kind of may not have been part of the presentation, but if there was anything that alluded to interest in.
During the presentation, they didn't ask for more because we had already said that we're going to meet with all of them, and I pointed to the email that we sent that had a link to our recommendations and letter and things like that. I do know that Bill got someone requested something from.
Yes, Jose, Alana asked the question. She wanted to know what conflicts we might have had, with the city where we wanted to do something or request something and were not, told not to do that. So we can share with her portions of our final report when it's finalized. But that was one question I did receive.
And I will say it was heartening when I was talking to them, they are the ones I talked to were very community engagement focused. They want to put a lot of effort into that and are really taking it to heart that they're from their district and they want to engage with their district. So they're keen to talk to us because we might be able to help with that. So good. Anything else, Juliet?
This is Juliet Hyams. Jose and Bill, did you get a sense within each district if there were similar priorities among each trio, or were they quite divergent, or did you even get into that?
They were all not really sitting together, a couple in pairs, but we didn't get to talk much about their priorities. They were more asking questions of us. So I don't know, although from what we heard is that they're working together really well. There was even a portion where it might have been contentious and then it wasn't,
Right.
Their own interactions. And I've heard from them over and over that so far they're working really well together. So we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah,
Oh, I just would be remiss for there to be an agenda item about onboarding to not name aloud that GTAC had asked to see the onboarding manual and several other aspects of the onboarding process and was not included in those. So I'm really grateful that you guys were there and were able to share our priorities. And also it's a forever frustration that we were not able to support or be part of those materials coming to fruition.
Yeah, I'd say, I think within the 15 minutes we had, we focused on introducing GTAC and hopefully gave reason for the new officials to want to talk with us further. And I think we were effective in doing that. Of course, we want to get those responses for the meetings. I'll share a recommendation that Juanita had was that ideally our first meeting can be with the whole council in a public meeting. But we know there's flexibility. There might be individuals that want to meet with us or to prep. And Juliet, with regard to your question, I did pick up, a couple references to potential tensions, although I concur with Jose, the esprit de corps was good. But that is, I think the council, I heard at least one comment, possibly two, that counselors are attentive to what tensions or differences they might have with the mayor. How inclusive will the mayor be? What differences there might be. It's just potential. Another I did heard, and I think we've all understood, in East Portland, the attention that the city has given to East Portland, at least farther out, has not been where it has been in other areas. So I think especially in District 1, there will be an interest in trying to address that.
I was happy to say the District 1 councilors were very outspoken. Anything else? No? Great. Pass it on to Bill.
Oh, all right. And we have 2 minutes. We're covering good subjects, so this is good. We've all received, the subject here is the community presentation on outreach because we committed to have a certain proportion of our presentations be to communities that have been historically excluded from city decision-making or processes. And we've, our plan has been to give presentations to these communities in 2025. We received a draft, a draft slides. So, this is a time for comments on those. Now, Laurie, you submitted some good comments with regard to the slides, and I think others may have too. But and we'll have more time than now. But if we have a couple minutes, this will be helpful. Fred, I saw you.
Yes, I agree with many, if not all, of Lori's points, especially in regards to talking about ranked choice voting to the general population 2 years before the next election. It's not going to be relevant to them, and it takes some time away from some of the other messages that I think are far more compelling to impart. As the new administration and council takes more effect come January, I think there's going to be much more community concern about how that's working and how it works. And if we can play a role in that, I'm happy to participate in that. But I don't think there's utility in beating ranked choice voting. Not that it's a dead horse, but that it's sleeping.
Thank you, Fred. And what I missed was another slide where Guillermo, you have some notes, and would you like to highlight those? And I apologize for perhaps talking over your comments.
No worries at all. I just wanted to take a minute or so to talk to y'all about the purpose of the presentations. I know there's been a lot of questions about it. Purpose of the presentations are really to continue our community engagement as we talked before, our goal is really to reach out to folks that have to left out of City Hall decision making. As we know, a lot of Portlanders did show up to our presentations. However, there's so many more Portlanders that we can reach out to. So our goal is really to have them know who their city councilors are. And then also how they can engage with the city past March. I think a big part of our goal is to continue and encourage Portlanders to really be part of the city. And I think these presentations are going to allow for that. So I just want to echo that GTAC has done an amazing job connecting with Portlanders. And the presentation is really just a draft. We're happy to change it to meet everyone's needs. But this is just kind of the structure and a foundation for us to kind of move forward to the direction that we want to go to. So we're open to any feedback and suggestions from you all.
Guillermo, again, I apologize. I was looking at an older version of the speaker notes where it had me making some comments. You are much closer to this, so thank you. Do we have some additional comments? Leah? Or
Destiny had her.
Destiny, okay.
I think for me, just looking at this presentation, like while I love the work that we did, I think it's on us to do some self-agency to like get some of our community peers to email the new counselors and mayors really recommending that they schedule time with GTAC, and that's a personal goal that I've forced myself to do. But I think for this one, like new form of government, we should really talk about who their counselors are, how to engage with them, but also like spend the time talking about their fears. I feel like there's such a power imbalance with the city of Portland that we've clearly have experienced here. And like, if we're reaching out to historically like disconnected and disenfranchised community, like we should really lean into how to empower them. And also, I think part of this planning on community presentation, I would like to see and have a scheduled time with whoever is going to oversee actually establishing a strong community engagement log standing. Like, I think a way to actually use our recommendations while taking them out of the presentation is by meeting with whoever is going to be doing that, because there's a long list that, you know, Guillermo, June, and like Julia have really helped us gather our resources, but like that needs to be long-standing. And so I think putting our recommendations out, us filling that in with our own, you know, social network and capital that we have to push it forward, but really empowering our constituents to just show up, because even that's a big barrier. And then there was something else I completely forgot. So thank you.
Well, I'm hearing these good points because I think it comes down to, you know, what will or should these communities want to know? I mean, to feel included. And we can try to tailor the slides to that. But Guillermo, do you have a time period for when you would like to receive additional comments?
Was today.
Probably, yeah. If you all can do it like in a week or so. We really want to solidify the presentation and narrow it down. That way you all have a chance to sit with it and kind of know what's on the speaker notes before we actually start going to the community. One thing that I forgot to mention is I will be taking on all of the coordinating. So I will be connecting with the organizations and having everything set up for you all. So that way you all can just show up in the presentation. And hopefully it'll be an easier process. So I did update the outreach spreadsheet to make it a little bit easier to understand. So if you all can go in there and add organizations that you all would want to connect with, I can start to that coordination process and then talking to folks about segments.
Thank you, Guillermo. This really helps us to be coordinated and engage in outreach. So thank you. Okay. Okay, let me, I'm sorry, on my slide. Okay, Leah, please.
Thank you. I love these ongoing presentations. Just, it's great to move from the theoretical into what's actually happening. I think different people are going to connect with it now that we have people in these roles, and we can not just say it's changing. We can say, this is your representative, and this is exactly how to engage with them. I think it's awesome. And as a surprise to perhaps no one, I am going to advocate for ranked choice voting staying in the presentation. I think it's going to be with us forever. It's not just, an every couple of years part of our lives. It's a new everyday part of our form of government. For the mayor and auditor, I can see how it just feels like something that you do in terms of marking your ballot. But for the city council, it's an integral part of how it came together, and that it's proportional representation based on all Portlanders. And I think that's an important story to continue to tell as we're talking about this new form of government in terms of how people were elected and how that means that, district-based representation. Ideally, these three people that are elected are representing all the varied viewpoints within that district. And I think we need to talk about ranked choice voting in order to be able to talk about that piece of it.
Thank you, Leah. And Jose, you have your hand raised.
Lori, before I.
Oh, yes, Lori, I do see your hand raised as well. Please.
I know that I sent you my comments, but I just wanted to make sure I shared it with the group, at least the high level, that I thought it was really important that we got very clear about the purpose of the presentation. So thanks for sharing that. I think, though, that we really should narrow our focus, that we have such a short period of time. And I don't know how many people are signing up to give these presentations. I know me, for one, who'll be traveling a lot and probably won't have the bandwidth to do more than, a small handful. So if we really want to reach people, if we really want to target it and we want to reach people that are traditionally left out of city government, then that's what we should do. And we should tailor a presentation towards that. And like Destiny was saying, how they engage. I just feel like right now, the presentation, we have a lot of great material in there that's been useful along the way. But for this audience, I think it's just a subset of that. Like, for instance, talking about our recommendations. I don't necessarily think this audience is the audience to understand what our recommendations are to city council. I don't think they're going to influence city council. They don't, many of them haven't even voted perhaps. So again, I guess it's just getting down to being very targeted with a very small group of us left who are going to give a couple presentations. Let's make sure we know who we're talking to and that it's really clear what we want to get across to them that will help them feel engaged or empowered or more part of the community.
Perhaps I should call on Jane first, because.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Go.
Go ahead.
Okay. Jane DeMarco here. I think, Guillermo, if you're taking this on, it would be very, very smart to test the presentation with a group first. Find some people that that would be kind to you and go and run it and find out what parts they really like and what parts they don't. And the only reason I say that is because I started with the presentation in schools and it went under 6 iterations because it became very, very clear that they were not interested in any charts. And you have a couple of charts in there that you can't see from a great distance. Charts just didn't work. And I'm guessing that this group would be the same, that it's more, who are these people? Who are your representatives? What do we know about them? This is how you get hold of them. Because really and truly, the only way you get into government or understanding government is through people. It's not through process or charts. So I would make it people focused, but I think you have to test it to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And I would say you are at the top of the list. And so
Yeah.
please.
I'm going to agree with Lori and Destiny and Jane. We need to focus it. We can mention our recommendations. I don't really think we need to go into them with the general public, but if they ask, we should be ready to respond. I do agree that we need to talk about ranked choice voting. It's going to be around forever. And I will disagree with Guillermo. We have been doing these presentations for 2 years now. I think if you change it and there's a slight change, we can handle it. We don't have to sit with the speaker notes forever. Some of us don't look at it till like right when we're going. I'm saying that because if we're meeting with city council members, I would love to ask them, what are your plans to engage with your community? We're going to be presenting. What can we share with them? And then be able to add that information in, because that's more valuable, I think, to the people we're presenting to than anything else.
Okay, and Amy, raise hand and we'll make this the last observation.
Well, I basically want to reiterate what you just said, which is that I think what we need is information from the city at this point, because we're sort of doing a handoff, I guess, of our relationship. So who are we handing them off to? And who is going to give us that? Is that the community engagement officer? Julie?
That's what we need to hear from them.
Yeah, or who is that? Who would know it? How can we find that out?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I think if the community is hearing us, they want to know who do we contact after March,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, if we're out there saying the city is genuinely here to listen and it's going to be different now, who is it going to be different now with? What is their phone number? Who exactly can you call? And what exactly is their address? And we need to be able to communicate that information, and that information needs to be shared with us as the people representing the public.
Good. Thank you, Amy. Okay, we'll conclude our discussion, but please, 2 weeks. More comments to Guillermo. And now let's talk about lessons learned. And Jose, over to you.
Thank you. Last week, we distributed out the draft of the final report. As a reminder, if you have general feedback on the draft report, please send them to Julia. As members of draft remaining report sections, you will have additional opportunities to review those sections as they finish them. We hope that the draft reports spurred ideas for lessons learned. At our last meeting, we shared reflections about the work to date. This isn't the time to repeat those reflections, we already did that, but rather suggest recommendations from the future. Like, what did we talked about our work, so now from that reflection, what can we do from now on to implement some of that? So anyone, you'll each have 2 minutes. If you do less than 2 minutes, that's really good too, because we're a little behind. And then we'll consider member motions at the end. I know there is some that was sent out last week. So I'm going to call on people. Bill will track time, so get mad at Bill when he cuts you off. Who wants to be first? Or do I just call on someone? You can start
Or
with,
we'll be ahead of schedule.
no. I'll start with a quick recommendation. Something that I've already told some of this, since I had an audience, I told some of the incoming council members, because whether or not we saw the work as valuable as it could have been, I think what we did is super valuable. If we only did community engagement, I think what we did is still super valuable. And I've been recommending to the incoming city council to convene another commission just like GTAC, that they can say, we're going to have a work session in 2 months on this. Can you share the following information and see what community knows? And get a group of citizens to like workshop things that they're working on. We can't expect them to do all the community engagement all on their own, just them and their staff. It's too much for anyone to do. So having a commission that could do that and serve to be able to talk things out and give feedback and really know what it is, I think could be really valuable. So I've been recommending that to them for the future. So. Anyone else? Juliet.
This is not a comment about the report. It's more of a response to what you're saying, Jose, which is that I think these advisory committees are a flawed model and they really need to be rethought. And I think it reflects, and I have struggled with this to find the words because this is not my first and I'm being recruited for another one. And they have a policy on this other advisory committee that if I do go on to it, I will clearly state that I will have no part of it. So there's just something funny in the culture of the city and how they treat volunteers, how they speak about publicly, how they treat them in meetings, that is shooting the messenger. And, we've talked before about there are 100 advisory committees or something, and what's that getting us? I mean, I think there's an opportunity for some analysis and some research and some feedback from these volunteers because a number of these committees are stuck and it's a waste of resources and it's a waste of goodwill. No matter how much positive community engagement you are doing, it is diluted so quickly by that kind of attitude, I'm sorry to say, from city staff, and I've seen it for years. So I agree with what you're saying, Jose, but I think the model needs to be revised.
And I think part of that revision is just being very clear on communication. Like, this would be a community engagement committee, you know, like what it's really expected.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very hard to come by. And I have gone back and watched some of the old meetings.
May I interject? We are at 2 minutes, but Juliet, I'm going to yield some of my time to you because I'd like to hear how, could you talk about how you would like to change it? If you have ideas for changing it?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't think we have probably time for it in.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I will write something up.
That would be great. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Jane?
Yeah, I've got a couple here. Bread upon the water comes back cake. We threw out a lot of bread. A lot of it is still floating out there. Some of it sank, but the cake will manifest. The lesson is we are an advisory committee. We have offered smart advice and recommendations. Some will sink, some will take. It takes time, and I believe in cake. 14 to 20 crazily smart and talented people constitute a circus. All circuses require a ringmaster. Julia has managed for 2 years to walk the higher wire, tame the lion, with help from June and Guillermo. The ringmaster admirably also stepped into the ring of city transition staff and present city council. It was a 3-ring circus. Lesson 1, the advisory committees are a circus. You can get dizzy, you can even fall off the tightrope. The show does go on. Lesson 2, the work is better, relationships improved, meetings more productive, staff calmer with a skilled advisory committee manager. You need to hire skilled advisory committee managers. When you are, number 3, when you arrive at the party late, you don't know the steps to the group dance. The good appetizers are gone. and your ideas for how the host should use your vodka gift are ignored because the host only wants to make gimlets. It took a year for me to really understand. It took a year for me to understand the content of the city work. I thought we struggled offering really good ideas like Bloody Marys and vodka tonics and greyhounds to have them not land as easily as I hoped. However, reading this GTAC report, there are clear places where the city process and plans have reflected our input. So the lesson learned is when starting late into a project, ask more upfront questions. What information or ideas do you think we might have which could help what you were already showing us here? Why did you land here? How will you let us know if we've been useful? And the last one is everyone, this is a quote from Bill Nye, a really fabulous British actor, who said, everyone you will ever meet will know something that you don't. So the lesson here is I have learned so much from everyone. I've come into contact within this room and online and at the city. I've had 2 years of fabulous learning, and I thank you.
Jane, all I gotta say is if you're ever joining another commission, please let me know so I can also apply. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think Fred and I have our hands raised. I think Fred had his.
Okay, Fred, go ahead.
Basically, thank you, Lee. I just agree about, we've got to ask the city to belly up a little bit more or look at their belly buttons about advisory committees generally. They're like 88.
Yes.
And if you go through the list and look at their membership and their goals and some of them don't do anything, you know, and they're all staffed to some extent. And is that really necessary? I liked our idea about maybe they should consider formalizing budget advisory committees for the 6 service areas, even though, of course, sewer, water, and roads are they're big giants in their own right, and they have different revenue streams. So that may be a little problematic, but we need to keep their nose to the grindstone as they will. I just don't think that a new advisory commission's the best approach at this point. I think just the frustration we've had and that Julia's evinced and that I've seen online is from people that I've talked to, that they think, oh yeah, it's just another advisory committee that they appoint and then they ignore. I don't know that happened as bad. It started out poorly, but I think we did engage with them and the staff on quite a few elements. And I feel that I've learned a lot more about the city and I'm optimistic about the future. And I can't say that all of my colleagues in the gray-haired, greater Portland area were or even are that optimistic yet. And so I feel like I'm a messenger for the transition, for the new council, that it's got to get better, and it will.
Thank you. And I will say, I wasn't suggesting an advisory commission. That's why I said community. Because when you take the advisory part out, just community engagement, it's very different. It's a different expectation. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Leah?
Thank you. I love the idea for an ongoing community engagement group. I think I gained a lot personally from this group. One of them realizing I love doing community presentations. I will forever sign up to help with that. The other thing that I'd say is thinking more about our experiences here in terms of some of the frustrations. I think I want to stand up for city staff a little bit in this, realizing that what we've been doing is we've been operating at a breakneck speed to make the biggest change in Portland government in Portland history. I don't know if that's true, but at least in Portland recent history. And the staff has been working so hard at doing this. I think that this body was brought together with the best of intentions, but ultimately, there's not time to be able to take everyone's recommendations into account while doing the work and while making implementations. Whether it's about orientation or it's about codes, we have to trust that the people who are in the work and doing it day after day after day are doing the job well. And so I think the piece of advice that I might offer for the city moving forward is to think about the difference between advisory committees and resource groups, because I do think this is a wonderful brain trust of folks here that could be a great resource. And that if we had come into this more with the mindset of what can we do for the people who are working on this every day, that it could have been a better experience for us and for also the city staff in terms of helping them. Because I think sometimes the line got blurry between us wanting to bring ideas versus us saying, what are you doing and how can we amplify and augment it?
Thank you, Leah. Amy?
Great.
So my thoughts for lessons for the report, having clear objective for citizens committees, just in general, I think something we experienced was there wasn't a clear objective and it was uncomfortable. Elevating Joe's line, the engagement without follow through is propaganda, I think is his line. And holding two truths at once. Yes, the city staff has been incredible and working at a breakneck pace. And also the community engagement at the city is profoundly broken. And we experienced that trying to do this outreach in an ad hoc way. It was like on day one, we were asked to make a list of groups that we all knew. And it was like, how could this possibly not exist? And so I think elevating that in our report about how it might seem like there has been an institutional basis for what we're sharing and passing on to you, but this wasn't institutionalized and to such a degree that it was actually shocking to us. And we want you to know that. And then finally, when, just a positive note, like when you send engaged volunteers who are informed into the wild to do presentations, great things happen. Connections are made, community is forged, relationships are built. All the things evidenced by our work are worth continuing and creating. And there was a lot of really positive things that came out of sending us into the community.
Thank you, Amy. Terry?
Just clarification, these 2 minutes that I have now are also the same 2 minutes that I have for the motion, or?
No.
Okay.
No. We're going to try to address the motions and
Got it,
something
okay.
different. Yeah.
But they're related, so I don't want to, watch it here. I, I, I I wasn't going to talk, and I was going to just write something, but something that Janice said earlier, I think resonated, and as everybody talked about it, that our one accomplishment was probably transparency. We, as our mere existence, forced city staff to come here and explain what they were doing, which was, I think, a modest success. Of course, they stopped coming here after a while, and they didn't give us onboarding updates. They didn't give us council updates, and so it kind of stopped. But I think that is reason enough for advisory bodies to exist, to force some of the stuff that happens within the bureaucracy out into the open and have it explained. And so that's something that we accomplished, and that's a good lesson.
It's big.
It isn't that big.
It's something.
It's something.
Something.
It should be more than that. It should be more than them talking to a self-selected panel of citizens who are busybodies. It should be more than that. But
But I will say also that what we're saying, and not just about this committee, is being heard, because I'm considering applying to the Sustainability Commission that just got posted, and I was talking to the Chief Sustainability Officer about how that is structured, because I cared more about how it was structured and whether or not I was going to go into another weird situation, and we had a great conversation about how she has heard some of these concerns and what she's doing to address them and make it not the same. So it's nice to see that the concerns we brought up here that we've heard, because when I joined this, I had heard it from people on budget committees. Those concerns are getting to the right people. So if anything, people are starting to hear it. I'm not saying everyone is hearing it, but some people are. And I mean, that's what we can ask for, right? Bill.
Okay, yeah, 30 seconds or so. I use an analogy that, we keep shooting baskets, or like playing basketball, and if we're going too far or someone doesn't want to take the advice, that's okay. We're constructively giving advice. I think that's a real valuable product and expression. And then picking up on the observations, we're also a sounding board if city staff comes and talks with us. I do perceive, city staff or city offices do have one issue. To the extent that staff communicates with us, it becomes public. So although ideally we'd like to be able to be part of their preliminary thinking process, if they shared it, it's public. So that's the tension, but we can keep pursuing it, and by being constructive, hopefully the staff will want to come to us. We have a new slate coming up. That took more than 30 seconds.
That's good.
Within a minute.
Good point.
Okay, Bill, we're still good on time. Anyone that we haven't heard from that would like to say anything?
Destiny.
Oh, your hand is up. It wasn't up like 30 seconds.
I know, I looked over. I'm battling between Leah's very pointed, like, I agree with your comments, and Terry's very pointed comments, which I also very agree with. It's like, there is the sense of city staff, like, we have so much time, we are accountable to city leadership and these unachievable but achievable like goals. And at the same time, we've talked about community engagement. Like, there is this notion that in order to be engaged or communicating with the city, you need titles, you need degrees, you need accolades, you need to not be employed, you need to have all of these experiences to justify getting some level of transparency from the city, or organizing to be at a council session, which is not accessible to the city. And it's just, I think this is also the beauty of the advisory committee is like we got to really be a familiar human face to the city, which is a great honor. And at the same time, while staff are very skilled and knowledgeable and amazing and doing the most hard work, and city leaders are having decisions made not in public spaces, like there has to be a level of transparency, which is literally written in Portland. Like we want to be transparent. And so it is like, while sometimes I feel like, why did I sit through this? It's also reaffirming to say no, have more faith in the people that are coming to you and listen. And 2 minutes is never enough.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I hear both of you, and it's been a great time, even with all that garbage in between. I made pretty recycled crafts out of it. I'm a pull a Jane, but I think the transparency is key.
Zach has his hand up, but Jill, you have a direct response to Destiny. You can go because it might make more sense.
I don't know what transparency is. I think it's a buzzword. I don't know what it means. Have we achieved it? How do you measure it?
Zach?
So I have reactions to everybody's comments to a certain extent, and I'll try to be personal with mine. I'm thinking about Janice's comments, like with the counterfactual. I think about everybody here in this room and to what extent would we actually have knowledge of what's going on in the transition had we were not a part of this. And I think about advisory groups as being a way of getting people to be more civically engaged. I do community engagement for the county, and we go out and do community meetings and that kind of thing. A 2-hour meeting, you get nothing out of it. And we could have, been doing these little, having the city try to do community engagement through just presentations and meetings, and it doesn't really resonate. I think the history of our ability to engage with this material gives us the ability to translate it for the city. And so I think that's really powerful. To answer your question, what transparency means, I would say, what do you actually know outside of what's in the news media? We have been able to get an inside peek into what's going to be on an onboarding in our onboarding sessions. We've been able to know how the HR process for finding and appointing a new city administrator. Those are things that might have been in a work session at a city council meeting, probably not. And so there's definitely significant gains that we've had at being part of this. And so I agree very much with Janice's comments. I do think, I recognize the pain that we all feel of God, we could have just done so much more. We have to reconcile with the reality that we spend 2 hours a month together. Give ourselves some credit and a break, right? And there's 15 of us. We had some alternates at a time. We were doing community meetings. There are over 600,000 people in Portland. And every single person that we can touch, whether it's the community groups that we know, and it's well, how does the city not know these people? It's we have a unique connection with those organizations that the city probably doesn't have. And so I think it's, at the end of the day, I found this experience fulfilling. I enjoyed meeting everybody here. I enjoyed working with all of you. I really appreciate all your perspectives, and I would absolutely do it again. I would absolutely do it again.
I'm right there with
Thank you.
with Zach. Just think about all the things you didn't know that wouldn't be easy to find, like the cost of putting an office somewhere in the district, between the security and the roads network and all the different details. Think about, and that's just one topic, right? Every topic that we had to learn a million little nuances to try to figure out what we should recommend. If we tried to go find that, or anyone in the city tried to go find that, it'd be hard. And we kind of put it all into one place. you can look up what we talked about, the agendas of the meeting, and people can look that up. So I think that is a huge tool. I loved everything we did. Even the frustrations taught me a lot about how to interact with the city and what to expect. So for me, the lesson that I learned and the things going forward is that I'm probably gonna do it again. I like that. Is that back up? Yes.
I think there's two folks who we haven't heard from, and maybe you don't want to be heard from, so I don't need to call you out, but I'm taking notes. So if anyone else wants to go.
Well, no one else is raising their hand. Destiny,
I
and then we'll do the motion.
Yeah.
I will say, like, following up Zach's point is I think it also afforded us the opportunity to hear the skill set from city staff on those conversations, which was so valuable. Like, to see city staff own their work and just be so knowledgeable, and sometimes that's not reflected publicly. Like, I think that in itself for the city is a great opportunity and resource. While it's exhausting to staff committees, and who knows how many there are, but to share the work that the city does in such a public way, I think is also valuable for the city. Because then we leave and we tell this to the people of Portland, and then they're not so frustrated. I know sometimes I left less frustrated because I'm like, at least there's somebody in facilities who knows what they're talking about, you know? I meet the Leahs, and it's exciting. And so I think that's a moment for city staff to really shine. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I like these production times. It's nice.
Yes.
But now we have a few motions. Let's start with that one. This is.
I think this is your story,
Terrace.
so you probably want to move it.
Yeah, so so thanks for squeezing this in. I have not given up on thinking about things and recommending things and trying to do stuff between now and March. And I think just this last conversation sort of indicates to me that we have some unique lived experience and knowledge when it comes to some of these things, and specifically advisory committees in the new government. But I was encouraged to not talk about the substance of those things and instead say, can we have a group that we can create to look at recommendations to supplement the ones that we have and bring them forth to the full GTAC in January, at the latest in February, to wrap up our work. So the topics that I'm interested in were the Code Commission, creating advisory committees at the service area level, which don't exist except in the ghost budget advisory committees, the legacy budget advisory committees that don't exist. But create those and then have some sort of advisory committee on advisory committees to standardize things and to suggest best practices into the future. So that's what I'm interested in talking about and creating recommendations for. But anyway, that's the motion in writing, so everybody can see it.
I will second. I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to, so that we can open the discussion. Fred?
Well, I have an additional proposed addition. The motion is to create a short-term work group to consider additional recommendations that may include and are not necessarily limited to. And so I'm not thinking that those are fait accomplis, that we're not voting on creating making these recommendations at this point, but simply having.
No, it's just a group.
Just the committee.
And if you are the group, you can bring your own ideas of things to talk about.
I don't know.
We should work on.
I don't know if Julia shared the additional language I had with mine that deals with the, well, certainly change management, but because of the severe budget constraints, the revenue constraints that the council's facing. And again, it's maybe pushing us into how the city operates, where we were told 2 years ago to keep our noses out of it. On the other hand, I think the Portlanders are expecting some cost effectiveness out of the unification of these bureaucracies. And that we've learned in the almost 2 years we've been here that there are duplications, particularly in regards to look at the budget analysts, that the report that was done, the study that was done for the budget office. What we heard about the plethora of communications specialists that may or may not speak with a single voice.
So what are you?
And so I think that we need the council. I would like the work group to consider a recommendation to the new council and mayor and to the administrator to refrain from filling non-essential vacancies, to eliminate redundant work positions and reassign the affected employees that are affected thereby to essential positions for which they are qualified. I don't think this is anti-employee by any means. It's not getting into HR, but it is, I think, something that as a citizen advisory committee on the transition, we could reflect what we've heard from Portlanders, why they voted for the change. It wasn't just ranked choice voting. Some would think so. They didn't like the way the city was being run and they wanted a change. And I think that the council has to deliver on that and meet their budget constraints.
Okay, the motion's just a little topic, the little paragraph at the top. The topics and everything under it isn't part of the motion. The topics can change and they don't have to be, that we don't need to make this motion. We don't have to make a giant list of things we're gonna consider. We don't have to keep motioning to add new topics, because if not, we'll be here for the rest of our lives. We will just pass the group and the group can then decide among themselves what to do. So just join the group and they will for sure talk about this.
Right, I just did this several days ago.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say pro or against the motion of creating the group? No? Ready for a vote? Okay. Julia, will you call the roll call, please?
Yes, I will. Okay, so the motion is on creating this short-term work group. I have a kind of random order on my screen, so apologies. Leah.
Let me see, being first.
I'm sorry, do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, thank you.
Jane.
Yes.
Jose.
Yes.
Terry.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Leah.
Yes.
Zach.
I'm a yes, but I want to make clear that I may be a no to any and all of those potential recommendations.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Well, that's right.
But I just want to message that to that work group because I probably won't be.
Dustin.
Yes.
Fred.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Juanita.
Absent.
Brian.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Leah.
I'm ready now. Yes, and what Zach said better.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree.
So I guess I would say, just from a staffing, if you are interested in serving, if you could put it in the chat, because we don't have a lot of time. I can follow up with folks, which doesn't mean we can't solicit ideas from folks who don't want to serve. So,
Okay.
but if you're interested in serving, if you do have another idea now too, you can put that in the chat. Thanks.
Okay.
Can we think about it?
Of course.
You till tomorrow?
If you know now, please put it in the chat.
Yeah.
If not, I'll reach out.
The motion.
Yeah,
No.
if we just go back to slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think next slide for Bill to close us out.
All right. I think as we know, the recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website and it will be available. And our next meeting is January 14, and we're going to have a deep dive into the November election.
Ooh.
We'll see the city election office, county elections office, or maybe Leah will be here wearing two
Two hats.
hats, and the city's voter education contractor. So that would be good. And Just a reminder to the Voter Education Committee, Subcommittee, a doodle poll is out to determine the next meeting. So that.
No, it's been.
It's done.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
set.
yeah, I,
January the 28th.
calendar, thank you.
All the fun people will be there.
So that's, so the next slide. And barring any agreement, let's adjourn the meeting and thank you everyone for this good discussion.